Hey, I'm on the edge of my seat here, back again with another brand new video, and today I'll be damaging all the boss fights in Yakuza 0! Real Estate Royale and the Cabaret Club Czar. I don't think I pronounced that right, but we're going to start off this fight by doing this heat action right here. And it's important to be in the beast mode before entering this fight, because if you're in another style and try to switch to the beast mode, like the time it takes to transition to the other style, the enemy's just going to hit you. In fact, even starting this fight off with beast mode, the enemy might just still hit you if you don't position yourself correctly, or if the enemy just wants to be mean at that point in time. And I will be doing this on the Legend difficulty. And Yakuza 0 has a unique modifier that you can't do New Game Plus on Legend. The thing about not having New Game Plus in Yakuza 0 is that all the upgrade wheels for every single style is locked behind doing the side content. And you can't get a New Game Plus file to do the side content. So you have to do every single one of these fights with limited upgrades. Well, to a certain point. I mean, there's going to come a point where you can unlock so many upgrades that it doesn't really matter how limited you are. You basically have every tool in the game. And at this point in time, you have a decent amount of tools, but the most important thing for Kiryu is the quick change clothes. And I wanted to do this because, well, it's something which I've always wanted to do. I think it's about time that I did these boss fights in this side content mode. It's one of the most iconic, big business modes in the entire franchise. I mean, since a lot of people started with 0, it's like, dude, I'm doing real estate. Dude, I'm doing the Cabaret Club. It's like one of the most popular things ever. And here we're being exposed to something which I didn't expect I'd talk about with Yakuza 0, and it's that we've kind of reached a point. It's 2025. We've had 2 Like a Dragon Gaiden games come out recently. Well, somewhat recently. There's been Like a Dragon Gaiden, the man who forgot his name. Like a Dragon Gaiden, Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. That's not what it's called in America, but in Japan, I think it still is called Gaiden. And what I realized is that one of the biggest complaints with the Gaiden games is that the combat isn't as good as Lost Judgment, and it's because, oh, you have a juggle limit, that kind of limits the creativity with the combat and all that, among other things, but it's like, okay, it's not as good as Lost Judgment, but is it better or worse than Yakuza 0? And to start this fight off with the Electronic King, I want to do this beast heat action, which you get from training with the lady, Tatsu. Pow! But what I realized is that we didn't have to wait till Gaiden to get juggle limits, because you get to Yakuza 0 and you don't have juggles, but you have wall bounce. You pretty much hit an enemy against the wall. There's actually a set limit to how much you can hit them against the wall before they just fall down to the ground. So we've been limited since this game. So honestly, replaying 0 has kind of been a little bit eye-opening, because I still love this game. I think it's still in my top 3 of the franchise. And also, let me just get this out of the way. This is not the director's cut, even though if it was the director's cut, I'm pretty sure these fights would play out the exact same way, unless there was a quality of life feature, like say maybe... I really hope that the director's cut of Yakuza 0 allows you to do New Game Plus on Legend. And I also kind of wish they did a couple more things, which I heard they didn't do. From what I understand, they did not map the Legend style to the D-pad, so you can't quickly switch to it, but I might be wrong on that, because I haven't played it, because I haven't bought a Nintendo Switch 2, because really, I don't really have a point to buy the Nintendo Switch 2 until I finish my Devil May Cry 3 No Damage. Ooh, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself there. Boo, did you check that out? That's one of the coolest tech things in Yakuza 0. Pretty much flying enemies count as a collision thing, and when an enemy can collide with you, you can parry that collision. It's one of the coolest things you can do in the game, and I'm just so happy that the quick change close allows you to tap into that. One of the saddest things about Yakuza 0 is that Majima never gets access to the quick change close, despite the fact that there is a system in the game to pretty much share items, but you can't share equipment. On this replay, I think I really, really prefer Kiryu's combat system over Majima's combat system. Specifically with boss fights, and well, one thing I gotta mention is that the boss fights in this video aren't very good. They're all designed with a Colosseum moveset sort of mindset. So basically, back combos are completely invalid against these enemies. There's boss fights in Yakuza 0, main story boss fights, where if you hit them the exact right way, you can actually do a back combo on that boss fight. That's impossible with every single boss fight in this mode, aside from the ones which are kind of basic enemies and not real boss fight movesets. Because after the first hit, once you hit them from behind, they'll immediately turn around. That's why I'm doing the things I'm doing. So boom, do the beast thing, except they landed against the wall, so actually what I wanted to say doesn't really apply right now. They're very counter-heavy. And here, whenever Aizawa does this move, you can kind of dodge around. Yes, that is Aizawa's moveset on the Pleasure King. The Pleasure King is either a woman, a drag queen, or something in between. They're the Pleasure King. Fuck you! I'm gonna do this grab move here. Pleasure King gets very, very grabby. And something which I realized while playing this game is that there's different types of grabs that the enemies can do, and only a certain type of grab can actually be countered by brawlers like grab, counter, like, you know, mechanic. And that just kind of drives me up a wall. You know, if they do like a wrestling sort of grab where they try to like hug your whole body, you can counter that. But if they grab you by the collar with like one hand, for some reason the brawler style can't counter that. And another funny thing is that in order to get the brawler, like, you know, grab counter, you have to be on the 3rd or 2nd heat bar, because on the 1st heat bar you can't do the move. What? What are we talking about here? So there's a couple mechanics of Yakuza 0 which kind of drive me up a wall, but I do think the combat system is still pretty fun. I kind of like going up to enemies, kind of hitting them. Them being aggressive is a good and a bad thing, because the enemies being so aggressive and wanting to attack you from across the room means that there's ways to like counter the enemy, kind of bait them out in a way that's easier than, say, in the Dragon Engine titles. But sometimes you try to run up to an enemy and like they'll just like super armor through your attack if you're using like the rush style. And it was here we're doing Majima stuff, and Majima's boss fights I thought were going to be easier because, you know, they're kind of one-on-one. I did all of Kiryu's boss fights first and then did all of Majima's afterwards. And I was like, I tried to do all of Majima's, like, you know, Cabaret boss fights in one day before going on vacation. And I almost did all of them except, you know, I reached the blue guy and then I realized this is hopeless. And why is it hopeless? Well, the hopelessness starts with this first guy. So this moveset is terrible. I fucking hate this moveset. Like, I think like Kanda uses this, like Riki Mas uses this in Yakuza 3. This moveset is just like so fast and like kind of unpredictable, and it kind of comes out too quickly, and he super armors through everything. And yes, like so every other boss fight in this video, he turns around like after you do one single back combo, so that's just like out of the question. So Majima's boss fights, I'm going to be playing them cheaply, not just because, you know, of the whole back combo thing, but because in order to do these boss fights, they coded it in such a way where you have to, you know, you fight these guys in their club management minigame. You know, like they run their own clubs. You run their clubs against their clubs to see who makes the most money, who gets the most people to see, like, you know, the gals, the hostesses and all that. And, you know, whoever gets the most wins that Cabaret Club fight. And it's like, friggin' sweet, dude. Oh yeah, but before I talk about that, I love the animation for the steel crowbar once you actually fully upgrade it. I don't know if they copied this from Yakuza 5. They probably did. I never actually ended up doing any of Shinada's weapon training. Just never really felt like doing that trainer. I think he always like wanted you to collect some item that I didn't feel like going out of my way to get. But if you do train with like Sajima's weapon trainer, you get like new weapon animations. And a lot of the weapon animations in this game I think are just copied over from Shinada. But I'm not sure if the crowbar one is. But like that crowbar moveset, I feel could just work perfectly in the newer games which have the juggle system, because like that last hit sends them into the air. So if I could just do that last hit, then switch to another style and then do a juggle there, that would be beautiful, man. That would be so beautiful. Like, I'd love that so much. Whoa, whoa! This is one of my shorter videos, and I hope the audio like worked correctly there. And also, I don't have my mic with me because I'm on vacation, so I'm using my headphones, my Apple headphones, so watch out. There's actually something very particular about the beginning of this fight. I want to do the combo on this guy, and I don't want to do a heat action. I actually want to do a second combo on this guy, because once you do a heat action on this guy, it kind of resets him in a way where I can't immediately kill him. And also, once you destroy one enemy, you can make other enemies enter a fear state, and once you make the other enemies enter a fear state, you can do that sick-ass heat action. It's like one of the best animated heat actions of the game. I love it so much, dude. The rush style is really, really fun, even though... look, this is one of the coolest things. You can literally like send enemies flying with a bicycle and then parry them with rush if you set it up correctly, because it counts as a collision. Because whenever they're flying away, it's a collision. There's also other weird collision things which won't be mentioned in this video because there are no stairs. If an enemy goes like flopping down the stairs, it's a very specific animation, you can actually do a counter heat action against them. I also ran into a weird situation. I did against the Pleasure King but didn't mention it, where if you're like against a wall and they're getting up, like you're like near that wall, even if they're not exactly doing an attack, there is still a chance that you'll do like the wall counter attack heat action, and I think that's really, really sick. So here the Gambling King is using the Boxer motherfucker's moveset. That moveset gets like thrown around so much. It gets tossed to like everybody. Even in Judgment, like one of the main villains just gets it, and it's like one of the most disappointing like boss fights in the game in terms of moveset specifically, because it's like that specific villain in Judgment is so cool. But anyways, enough complaining about Judgment. I'm gonna do that counter there. So, you know, if you really want to, you can like abuse the fact that like switching between styles like takes so long that you can kind of like, you know, try to bait counters that way. I don't do it that much, but against the Gambling King, it just kind of falls into my lap and I end up doing it. And boom, don't really do a hit, so yeah, boom, do a heat action there. I forgot to fully explain why Majima's boss fights are hell. So, you know, after doing the club battle, the guy who owns the club will immediately go, man, I'm gonna kick your fucking ass, man, rawr, and then you go kick his ass. However, if you're trying to do a no damage and you get clipped during the boss fight, you know, on Legend difficulty, you don't retry that boss fight, you have to reload a save. And when you reload that save, guess what? You have to do the entire club battle again to retry that fight over and over and over again. Are you out of your damn mind? Who designed this shit, dude? What the fuck? So that infuriated the shit out of me because despite the fact that Majima has 1v1s, despite the fact that he has less fights than Kiryu, I think on like a moment-to-moment basis, doing his content was more painful than Kiryu, despite the fact that Kiryu gets the harder fights with the groups. Okay, that's not even true because Kiryu has tools to deal with the groups. Okay, that is true. I'm getting a little bit rage. I'm getting a little bit heated because like, dude, what the fuck? Also, for those who have been watching my streams, I've basically been like streaming my entire process of doing these boss fights. And another reason why I'm doing these boss fights is because originally I was just doing the Yakuza 0 all long battles video where I'm going to no damage every single long battle in the game on Legend, which means I have to do it on New Game Plus, which means certain long battles I'm very limited with what upgrades I can get because I can't upgrade Mr. Shakedown for some of the beginning fights, and also I don't have access to like the side content, so I can't get the Legend styles before certain long battles. But, you know, I'm going to have to, like, do all of the side content eventually to get the Legend styles, to use them in the long battles, to get certain upgrades for the other styles. So I thought, you know, if I have to do it anyways, why not, along the way, also no damage these fights? And one reason why I didn't want to do it is because, well, it's gonna take too long, but I did it anyways. So I have been streaming, like, you know, my progress while doing this stuff. And just returning to the side content, I want to go back to my point about, does Like a Dragon Gaiden have better combat than Yakuza 0? Maybe! I don't know. Like, in replaying Yakuza 0 for, like, these new no damages, you know, to kind of refresh myself on, like, one of my favorite games in the franchise, I don't think I like Yakuza 0 any less, but playing it, I am noticing, like, some things which I think the newer games do slightly better. Like, I don't hate 0 more, I just appreciate some of the newer games just a little bit more. But I'm still going to put Yakuza 0 in my top 3. One thing which I kind of like about the newer games is just the way enemies like flop on the ground. Because something which I kind of noticed with Yakuza 0 is that, you know, they really stay on that ground and you can't really do much against them aside from a heat action, maybe stomping them. Though quick change clothes with Kiryu does make things a little bit more exciting where you can just like, you know, stomp them, instantly switch to another style, stomp them with the other style, switch to another style, switch to the other style. Okay, I'm really kind of mixing up my words because Yakuza 0 actually has like some pretty interesting like ground tech, especially with like Majima's like breaker style where you can like dodge into an enemy, grab them when you're on the second heat bar specifically. You can basically loop enemies that way, but then again, that is kind of cheese. I don't know if I really call that tech. Look at this, like, ooh, that animation is so cool though. And it is kind of a nice way to kind of get past actually fighting these guys, because some of these guys are such a pain in the ass. This guy is also using that boxer guy's moveset from Yakuza 5. Yahata, I think that's how you say it. That moveset is like easy, but also like deceptively easy, because sometimes you can super armor through something when you're not expecting it, and it's really, really hard. This is the hardest fight out of all of them, dude. This guy is such an asshole, dude. Fuck the Media King, man. So we're going to start this fight off. We're going to do this combo here. We're going to knock him into the ground, switch to Rush, switch to Beast again. We're going to do 2 hits kind of facing away from them, or maybe like the second hit kind of hitting them. We're going to do this heat action right here. And then after we do this heat action, if there's anyone still left alive, we're going to try to stomp them to death. And after we do that, there'll still be like 2 or 3 like, you know, normal goons kind of lying around. You have to be careful that the other goons aren't going to like clip you while you're doing this. And also I ran into this weird issue where this heat action is so lucky. I wasn't even trying to do this heat action. And like, I could have gotten clipped so easily, but like that music, that was such a beautiful heat action. Like this attempt, I had so many like, you know, lucky moments. I was like, holy shit. But yeah, this fight will test you. Also for my upgrades, I'm trying to like avoid having too many power upgrades. I mean, with Majima, I will have to like fully upgrade the power of the Breaker and Slugger style, because there's certain combos in that game, in those like upgrade trees, that are completely locked behind having full power. So, you know, like the R1 triangle counter with the bat is locked behind full power. The R1 triangle counter with Breaker is locked behind full power. I'm going to try to keep Thug on the lower power, but as I do the long battles, I kind of like decide between that here and there. And yeah, Media King has a really annoying thing where even if you like, you know, just do a normal attack behind his back and you turn around and try to do more combos, he has counter attacks. You're going to see it at the very end of the fight. There's something really neat there. But yeah, this guy you have to be really, really careful. And he also like attacks super, super fast. So if you're trying to do this like, you know, beast tech thing where you kind of pick him up, you charge up your heavy attack, you launch into him, you parry with Rush style. If you're on the first heat bar, I would not recommend trying to do Rush combos, because if you try to land that heavy attack, the Media King will just dodge it because you're too slow. So yeah, I also wanted to return to Zero to see what my thoughts are on the heat system. And for the most part, I think I still like the heat system, but there's certain boss fights where like routing them is kind of a pain in the ass because you kind of end up in a point where if you want to do a lot of heat actions, you end up doing no combos because you always end up on the first heat bar, and when you're on the first heat bar, you can't really do much of anything. And that's a bigger problem with Majima, I think. I end up getting really limited with him, and it's just kind of a pain in the ass. But also, I think it might be my fault, or I should have probably routed those fights better so I can actually have heat by the time I needed it if I wanted to do a combo. To be fair, given the fact that I have to do the entire like Cabaret club like battle every single time I want to reach out one of the fights, I kind of gave up on the whole, you know, doing combos on those enemies thing. That was such a clutch moment. The Media King fight here is such a clutch moment. This is my favorite fight in the video. I'm a big fan of my Kiryu fights in general, because like with Kiryu, when I'm like revisiting him, I'm like, holy shit. I'm doing stuff which I've never done in my previous videos, because if you haven't seen my previous video, I did no damage all the boss fights in Yakuza 0 on hard difficulty, but that was like 4 years ago, so a lot of the stuff there is pretty antiquated, but like, you know, that's my classic video right there. And returning to Majima's combat in this game, you know, I am realizing that there's new tech which I've never done in my previous videos that I want to do for, you know, my new no damage videos, you know, like the freeze pose counters. I'm getting a little bit more familiar with those. I want to do like, you know, the bats, like, you know, counters more, like, you know, the block one, which you can only do on the first heat bar, the one you can do on the third heat bar. I want to do that more, you know, I want to do some sick things. I want to do more bounding combos with, like, you know, the thug style. I want to do, like, more, like, area sweeping, you know, like, you know, takedown moves, or, like, you know, like, square, 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 4 times, triangle, like, you know, triangle, when we go, like, just swings the whole thing around. That covers so much area that if you do it in, like, an open place with, like, you know, no walls, you can deal some serious damage. Look at this! Woo! Dodge! Hit him! Get the fuck out of my gate! Ah! Dude, like, yeah, no, that was an amazing finish. I wasn't even trying to do it, but I ended up doing it. Like, my instincts kicked in. You know, like, you know, those proud instincts I try to, like, you know, harness, you know, try to, like, mold over years of no damage. It just kicked in right there. But yeah, all the thing about the new, like, Majima tech, which I've never done before, which I should do now, is that I don't do it in this video. I kind of keep to more cheap tactics, which I did in the past, and I just gave myself hiccups here. So, yeah, no, I do want to do it for like, my long battle video. I want to do some of the cooler stuff with Majima, and I think with the long battle video, it'll be slightly easier, harder in some areas, you know. A give and take, equivalent exchange. But to get back to my point about, like, kind of ground tech, the way, like, enemies flop in the newer games, like a Dragon Gaiden, I think I slightly prefer it because it keeps you, like, more actively in the combat system. You know, before, there's a lot of setups you can do, but you're not exactly doing combos, while in, like, a Dragon Gaiden, you know, if you hit an enemy on the ground with, like, the dragon style, you know, you can actually, like, hit them with your light attacks. And I think that actually keeps, like, the momentum, like, you know, going, you know, like, the enemy doesn't stay on the ground. He, like, tries to roll away. Well, you know, as long as they're, like, a boss fight or something, because there's certain enemies that just stay on the ground. You can set up some pretty nice stuff if they just stay, like, standing still on the ground, like some of the heavy attacks. So there's, like, some neat stuff there. And, yeah, here the Media King is helping us fight these guys, but I still hate him because he's an asshole. And, you know, now that we're here, I might as well mention what my thoughts are on, like, the actual side business, you know, like, side quest things, you know, because, like, it's been so long since I've played the real estate that I might have, like, you know, I might be holding it up to, like, a higher standard, to, like, a lower standard, actually, because of my nostalgia. So I'm like, if I return to it, you know, after playing so many of the future games, will I still like, you know, the real estate, you know, like, business minigame or the Cabaret Club? And the answer is yes, I still kind of like it. Honestly, there's something just kind of cool about, like, you know, walking up to, like, every single, like, part of the open world, like, buying buildings, how the side quests just, like, funnel back into the real estate stuff. And yeah, at the end of the day, you are just, like, managing menus and then, like, waiting a bit. But if you go to, like, the Clown and trade all your completion points to speed up how fast the businesses collect money, it's very, very quick. But, you know, if you don't get those upgrades, it could be a little bit more tedious. And I will admit that by the time we reach the Media King, the amount of time it takes for the Media King properties to, like, you know, collect their money gets a bit absurd. But, like, before then, if you get all the upgrades at the Clown Tower, if you don't waste your completion points on, like, something stupid, like, I don't know, more sprint, like, it'll be kind of fun. I don't know, I actually really, really liked it. And the Cabaret Club minigame, I remember being, like, maybe a little bit too easy but fun, but honestly, in returning to it, I think it actually is very engaging and very fast. Anyways, so I made an announcement, I made a post that I wouldn't be able to finish this video before the 18th, and that's because you should see this on my previous stream, that I pretty much, like, spend the whole day trying to do all of Majima's content in one day, and then I reach this part and I realize I'm not going to do it, because this fight is such a pain in the ass. He has 4 health bars, his moveset is like the Muay Thai moveset, and the best thing about the Muay Thai moveset is that every time I say that word, I keep pronouncing it worse and worse. I don't know how to pronounce that martial arts. But that moveset in this game is like one of the worst fucking things imaginable. I think they're using like a Yakuza 5 variant of it because this moveset does appear in the original Yakuza 1, but this is not specifically the Yakuza 1 version of that moveset. I think in Yakuza 5 it got a little bit of a revamp, it's a little bit faster, has a couple new moves, and it's terrible. It's terrible. So I'm going to be playing this guy completely cheesy because, once again, this moveset is terrible. This boss fight is fucking annoying. And you have to do his entire Cabaret Club, like, you know, boss fight before every single time you want to challenge this guy. And that shit takes like 9 minutes a piece. You know, it's like, oh, it's like 3 minutes on the clock. No. Every time you help out one of your hostesses, it freezes time. And you're going to be helping out your hostesses a lot, so it becomes 9 minutes! Dude, like... there's a lot to get annoyed about in this game, but one of my favorite things is every time you hit an enemy, money flies out of them. That's so cathartic. It's honestly like one of the most like cathartic like feeling punches in the franchise. Like none of the other games do it except for maybe like Pirate like Yakuza these days. But honestly, the way Pirate Yakuza did it wasn't as fun because like when the doubloons come flying out of the enemy, it's not like a physical object. It doesn't look or feel like a physical object. It looks like a fucking PNG animation. I don't know. Something about the coins that fly out of enemies looks cheap compared to like the dollar bills and coins that fly out of enemies in this game because like I'm pretty sure like the dollar bills, the yen, and the coins that fly out of enemies in this game are like an actual physical object with like real world like physics, you know, simulated in the game, and it just looks really impressive, and it's just like it's still flying around. That's fucking awesome, man. But yeah, no, my solution to actually get this video to you, you know, like today, which for the commentary will be the 16th, I'll be releasing a no commentary on the 15th. Is that I did these final 2 Majima fights on the Steam Deck, and I'm just so happy I still have a Steam Deck. I mean, like, it's not as powerful as a Nintendo Switch 2. I don't think I'm going to be able to, like, run Yakuza 0 smoothly at 4K or anything, but I'm able to run it smoothly at 720p, 60 FPS, and because Steam made its own, like, self-recording software, I used to have my Steam Deck on running, like, Windows 10, so I could, like, do OBS and do Roblox mods on the Yakuza games, watch my Roblox No Damages. But I decided to switch to Linux because now that I have like an actual PC, there was a time where like the Steam Deck I had was the strongest PC I had in my arsenal, which is kind of sad. But once I actually got like an actual PC that could like, you know, run games at 4K and like, you know, make everything look real nice and pretty, there wasn't really much reason for me to run my Steam Deck on Windows, so I kind of switched it back to Linux. But now that I switched it back to Linux, it has its own self-recording feature. I don't have to like download some weird third-party app. Steam has its own like, you know, built-in software, hardware, I don't know what it's called, to do that. Anyways, this fight fucking sucks. I'm gonna shoot him with a zap gun. So in order to like grind money to get as many upgrades as I wanted, or to like, you know, buy buildings for the side businesses, grinding shakedown is the name of the game. And I made a mistake where I actually fought him for real with like the actual combat system the game gave you for like the first like 10 hours of the game. But then I realized you can just shoot him with a zap gun and pretty much like hunt him like a bear, and it's beautiful. Also with Kiryu specifically, if you use the zap gun with the beast style specifically, I'm pretty sure you deal more damage, so there's actually differences in like the property of what the weapons will do depending on what like style you use, and that also goes for the guns. So yeah, no, like using the zap gun just makes grinding shakedown so easy, and it fucking eliminates the shit out of these guys. Like, I mean, these guys are fucking terrible. It's 4 guys, it's a tiny room, barely any walls, so you can't really do like the cool wall-bound stuff. And like, even if you do, there'll be another like enemy that runs up right behind you and fucking kills you. And you know, the only other way people I've seen like do this is just to spam like the breaker, you know, the famous breaker combo, which everybody does, which is like really cheap. It looks beautiful and it does so much damage and it's so efficient, but also it's like the cheapest thing ever. I love how that guy just gets back up. You know, it kind of makes that cutscene like flow better, I think. And boom, Majima's unlocked his knife style. I am the Majima-san. I'm crazy like Majima-san. I laugh like him too. So there, that's my audition to be Majima, Matthew Mercer. You know, please quit voice acting. I'm here. This is the new generation right now. But besides my delusions of grandeur, I have been shit-talking Majima a lot, and I just want to say the thug style like is still one of my favorite styles in the franchise. It's so much fun. And, you know, it could be so much better if you had more dodge-canceling opportunities, but the fact that you can dodge-cancel out of your final finisher is still fucking sick, man. This fight is such a pain in the ass, you know, it's like so lucky. You have to get so lucky that the other guy doesn't go and, like, barrage you, but the first person you want to destroy out of the Lackeys is the one copying Joji Kazuma, Joji Fuma if you're playing the original like PS3 translation, because that guy is super aggressive. At least like the boxer guy, you know, he could get a hit on you, but he's way less aggressive than like the Joji Kazuma guy. Because like if you try to defeat like the boxer guy, the Joji Kazuma guy goes fucking mental and starts trying to like, you know, drop kick you, do flying kicks, do some fucking Virtua Fighter shit, because some of his moves are just copied straight from Virtua Fighter. Fun fact. And whenever you're doing like some of those chair beast combos, don't do the full light attack combo. Do the final hit as a heavy attack because you can cancel out of it quicker. It's still kind of hard to get the timing of the cancel down, but it is easier to cancel doing the final like light one, and also doing the final heavy attack just deals more damage, and it looks cooler. And this room looks fantastic. Can I just say that? This room looks beautiful. There's certain boss fights in like this side content mode which I didn't do for this video, because they weren't really boss fights. It's like kind of like, you know, whenever you have to like, go check out a club, you end up fighting like a few goons, and they're very unremarkable goons, but a beautiful like music track plays, and that music track is playing right now in this fight, so I'm glad that it got to be in the video. It sounds amazing, but you know, a lot of the fights that feature it are just whatever and not worth having inside this video. However, Majima gets like his own version of like this sort of battle theme. It's called Interplanetary Spark, and I didn't really do any of the boss fights which like involved it because none of those fights, they were even more unremarkable than Kiryu's versions of those fights. So, you know, really had to mention that. Also, to circle back to a previous topic I was talking about, this is the boss fight which is like more susceptible to back combos. You can't do anything that crazy, but you can do a lot more than basically every single other fight in the game because these guys don't necessarily have like a boss, like, you know, moveset coding. I don't know, it's really weird to explain. They like react to your attacks a lot more like enemies. For number one, the heavy attacks with Rush actually knock them to the ground. It doesn't really happen with like the main boss fights in the same way, and it's really weird. And boom, look at that. I love that I did that. I love that that landed. I don't like that this didn't land. And this like final thing is kind of awkward. But honestly, I actually kind of like this because I pretty much set myself up to do one last, wait for it, boom, counter hook. Oh no, I got the timing wrong on that. My bad. didn't recognize my own footage. But yeah, I mean, to go back to the side businesses, I kind of wanted to revisit them because, you know, like I'm kind of feeling a little bit jaded on the newer games, and I kind of wanted to wonder, is that because the newer games are getting slightly worse, or am I just too nostalgic for the older games? And I'd say it's a mix of both. Because, I mean, I really wasn't vibing that much with, like, Majima's pirate side content in, you know, Pirate Yakuza. But in returning to this mode isn't really that much better. I think I slightly prefer it, but, like, some of these fights are a little bit underwhelming. One of the things which I appreciate about the newer games is that they're getting a little bit more ambitious with, like, their combat design. You're fighting, like, you know, 20, 30 guys all at once, while here, you fight, like, 4 dudes, or you fight 1 dude, and that's about it. And some of these moves are just a little bit more boring. But to be fair, some of the new content in the newer games is still pretty much like slapdash. The thing about this side content is that it is very slapdash compared to the main game. They're basically just like pulling movesets out of their ass across the entire series, just kind of slapping it onto like a random guy there, which can be fun, but it does feel a bit slapdash. And the newer games are still doing that, but they have a lot more movesets to copy, so, you know, they're a little bit better at tricking you with that sort of stuff there. But yeah, in terms of ranking every single like side business in this franchise, that would make a great video, but it'll be really tough. As for no damaging every single like boss fight across every single big side business, you know, side content, side quest thing in the franchise, I don't think you could do that for every single game, because some of the side businesses in some games don't have boss fights. Like Kiwami 2, the Cabaret Club has 0 boss fights, so what are you gonna do? What video are you gonna make? The construction site in Kiwami 2 doesn't have boss fights until like after you do the whole thing, and then they're all in the Coliseum. But does that even count? You know, because Yakuza 6 had the same sort of structure, except you actually have to have boss fights in between the side business. You know, you get what I'm saying? This is a really short video. I'm more accustomed to my videos being like an hour long. Shout out to my Patreon members. They're about to come up on the screen right now. Boom, Oscar29, Santo Nishikino, Kyle W789, and Walkman. Thank you so much for supporting the channel, and thank you all for watching my video. And I'll see you all then for my next No Damage. I'll have more to say in an hour-long video, but yeah, peace out!